my true crime lovelies. How are you? I hope you are as lovely in life as you are in my mind. All right, I let the members know already. But if you're not a member, I'm going to tell you because we got this video. Jackie. Oh, wait, not that Jackie. Jackie Fulford. So I mentioned, I was watching the head gossip, hot goss Kathy over there, gossip, rumor, and innuendo, and she called Donna Adelson's lawyer, Jackie Fulford, a disgraced former judge. Now, I knew she was a former judge, but I didn't know she was a disgraced former judge. So, you know me, I wanted to know, well, how did she get disgraced? So I had to do a little digging. And that is what this video is about. Let's talk about it on the other side. I'm going to run the intro. I'm going to thank all my members. I would like to thank you for being here. Hit the thumbs up if you are so inclined. And I will see you on the other side. All right, let's get into it. Jackie. Not that Jackie, but it's fun to say. All right, Jackie Fulford, who is representing Donna Adelson. Let's get all up in her business and dig into her past. All right, so Jackie in 1989 to 2009 was the Second Judicial Circuit. Was in the Second Judicial Circuit. She was the chief assistant state attorney under Willie Meggs. So you know who has that role now? Miss Georgia Cappleman. So imagine her. I wonder what she feels like in the courtroom with Georgia. Like, I used to have that job. Now I'm representing this fool. Oh, wait, but I'm cashing checks. Money. Wait, where's Melissa when we need her? Come through, Melissa. Money. Sometimes poor life decisions lead you to make decisions based on money, but listen, who am I to judge? Okay, so then in 2009, there was another judge who was, I don't think the word is promoted, but he was elevated to the Supreme Court of Florida, and so there was a vacancy. So at that point, Governor I was going to say Christie. That is Chris Christie in New Jersey. No, Christ. It might. Yeah, I hope it's not Christ. Charlie Crist appointed her to a judge in the Second Judicial Circuit. I believe straight away she was in Wakulla, but she went through a couple different ones. There's 6 counties in that second district, so don't quote me. But she went through at least 3 counties there, right? So that was in 2009. That period of time that gentleman who was elected, who graduated to the Supreme Court, ran in through 2010. So then she had to run and be elected in 2010, and she ran unopposed. So she was elected as a judge. And then in 2015 comes this involuntary retirement, which is where the what was the word that I said Kathy used? I forgot that. Disgrace. This is where the disgrace starts. Okay. So the Florida Judicial Qualifications Commission brought charges against her, and then they forced her into retirement as a judge. So let's get into those details, shall we? So first I want to go back and mention, so she had Georgia's role under Willie Meggs at the time. So he's a former state attorney for the Second Judicial Circuit of Florida. He served for 32 years. He was elected for 8 terms. Bow down to Mr. Meggs. No matter what you think of his politics, the people must have loved him. 1985 to 2017 when he retired. That's a long time. So Meggs is one of the many reasons why it took a long time to get the Adelsons to trial, right? So we know the people of color. So Kathy, well, first it was Katie McBann was baby daddy, Sigfredo, who was arrested, and then Luis Rivera. He was already in custody, so I don't know if arrested is the right word, maybe charged with the murder of Professor Dan Markel. And then later in that year, either August or October, Katie McBanoa was arrested. That was all in 2016. Mind you, the murder happened in 2014, so even that was a long time to get to them, but there was a lot of digital evidence that was going on there. Speaking of digital evidence, hope you checked out the live with myself, Florida PI Sam, oh my God, Squeegee of Justice, and Joe Schmo, where we talked about the digital evidence, and Lori Vallow. I will link that in the iCard above. Anyway, there's a lot of digital evidence. There's photos of the fellas at the, circling the gym while Dan was in the gym. There's photos of them on the bus. They weren't on the bus. It was taken by the bus as they were traveling toward the home of Mr. Markel. And then there's like photos of them at the ATM. There's a lot of digital stuff. Their phones, they turn them off, but then they turn them back on while they were still in Tallahassee. So there was a trail. But it took 2 years to get them. The Willie Meggs was protective of the Adelsons. Now, all the Adelsons were lawyered up, right? Wendy had a lawyer, Donna and Harvey had a lawyer. Charlie had a lawyer. I'm not sure if he had one exactly in 2016, but he nonetheless had one before he went to trial, like well before. And it wasn't Rashi. I can't remember the name of it, but he had someone else. So anyway, early in the investigation, Meggs was sort of protecting the Adelsons, saying there was not enough concrete evidence. I did look to see if they had ever donated to his campaign. I couldn't find anything, but because we're talking like he was done in 2017, there's usually like not a statute of limitations, but a reporting period that the IRS has. So it may not have to be disclosed, but I did try and find it. So early in the investigation, one of the quotes from Meggs was, if the police believe they have probable cause, then they should go make the arrest. So a reporter had asked, like, why, what's going on with the Adelsons? Why aren't, because they were the obvious choice, right? The connection Katie had with Charlie is what connected them to the Adelsons. And like, what motivation did Katie, Sigfredo, and Luis have to unalive or be unalived how did they even know Dan Markel existed if not for Charlie Adelson, right? So there was a clear circumstantial evidence. They didn't have that Dolce Vita audio enhanced yet, et cetera, et cetera. So Miggs was going to bat for them, right? If the police think they have probable cause, they should make the arrest. They don't need me. I would say to Chief Michael DeLeo, go make the arrest and get ready for your civil suit from whoever they have arrested without probable cause. So he's talking smack about the sheriff. Like, I'm sorry, what, sir? Mm-hmm. Then after McBanoa's arrest, he says, I believe, and that was also in 2016, I believe, and investigators believe, that at one point McBanoa called Charlie to tell him the deal is done. What proof do we have? None at the moment. It will probably come, but we are not there yet, right? And at this time, through their attorneys, the Adelsons were obviously protesting their innocence. So that's kind of the background on Willie Meggs. So there's a relationship there. If we go back, she worked under him from 1989 to 2009 for 10 years, right? So Meggs was looking out for the Adelsons. Now Miss Jackie Fulford is representing Grandma Gotti. So we're going to get to the disgrace part right quick. So this is not going to be a long video. 2011, 2013, there are murder cases. Now, nothing comes of this, but she sentences a juvenile, Deshaun Thomas, to 2 life sentences. And I have a few little notes on that. They're on this screen, so I'm going to look to this side and then I'll look back and give you guys eye contact. Okay. So in 2013, she abruptly began presiding over the 2011 double murder and the 2012 solicitation to commit first-degree murder of Deshaun Thomas, who was 17 at the time these allegations occurred. State Attorney Willie Meggs stepped in and assigned Assistant State Attorney Jack Campbell to prosecute Deshaun, right? So whose case was in adult court. So they were trying him as an adult. Assistant State Attorney Prosecutor Jack Campbell at the time was the son of Leon County Sheriff Larry Campbell. The investigation of the double murder case was under the jurisdiction of the Leon County Sheriff's Office. So then there's a gentleman that steps in, Don Odham, Odham, who is a businessman. He stepped in. he interrogated Deshaun and his mom. Deshaun's mom is alleging that he essentially kidnapped them because he locked them in a room, would not let them out, would not let them have an attorney in that interrogation or stop the interrogation to get an attorney, which we all know is we have the right to do that under the Miranda warning, right? And so he did not do that. He was not a detective, but he presented himself as a detective. And in fact, later they would delay Deshaun's trial because this non-detective was on vacation. So they trampled all over Deshaun's speedy trial rights, like just left, right, and center. They did him wrong. And then so after learning of the circuit court judge Hankinson's previous acts of deception, Deshaun's mom contacted the governor, Rick Scott at that time, and state attorney general Pam Bondi. Y'all know Pam Bondi. Now she's not state attorney there anymore because she's running the Department of Justice for Trump, but you know who she is, right? And so immediately after the mom escalated this, right? And part of the deception is including like Dawn Autumn interrogating her son and all those things. So immediately the governor stepped in, and the circuit court judge Hankinson was replaced by Jackie Fulford. It didn't get any better on the case though, right? And it said at that point, they're just noting she previously worked under Willie Meggs, who at the top is involved in this because Willie Meggs is the one who assigned Jack Campbell as the prosecutor. So there's a little bit of like incestuousness going on, right? In February 2012, Henry Segura's attorney, Chuck Hobbs, filed a motion with the court arguing that Jack Campbell should be dismissed as lead prosecutor in the capital case of his client. So that's another case that was going on. Mr. Hobbs believed it to be prejudice for state attorney Willie Meggs to assign Jack Campbell when Jack Campbell's dad was running the sheriff's office who had investigated that person. So let's see. So Deshaun, going back to Deshaun's case, he pled not guilty. His pre-trial was reset at least 4 times within 16 months by motions filed by the state prosecutor, Jack Campbell. His defense attorney never objected. There's a lot of these things going on. Long story long, she ended up sentencing him to 2 life sentences, plus there was a firearm charge, but there was some evidence that was suppressed. There was a question around why this businessman got to interrogate him. None of that really was sussed out. So at that point, there was, eyebrows were raised about Miss Jackie Fulford and her, what some deemed as abuse of power, others deemed as like looking the other way. I don't know what motions were filed. This I found on a website for, what was it? It's called Moms Against, I don't know, something basically of like feeling like their children got railroaded by the judicial system. Then there was the death penalty case that happened where it was March of 2014. Presiding judge was Jackie Fulford alongside state prosecutor Jack Campbell. It was a death penalty case. And then a year after that, she fell under investigation. I don't have any beef with Jack Campbell. I've seen him on various shows like Surviving the Survivor. He has his own YouTube. I know he has resigned since then. But there's allegations of this death penalty case showing so that the young man was accused of like murdering a pregnant woman. Deshaun was. And then in this other case, also underage and was facing the death penalty. I don't have the outcome on that, but there were questions being made in the community. She also presided over some things like retirement pensions, which ended up being pivotal. There was something where she got overturned, where she like fishing nets and how it would impact the local farmers versus like the big commercial companies. And so there were some things where she kind of stuck her neck out for people, like with the pensions, and then she reversed herself on the fishing nets. I guess once she understood how it impacted the local farmers. So it wasn't all bad. I'm not trying to paint a bad picture of her or her, or just diminish her time as judge. She did do some good things, but questions started to be raised around 2011, 2012. If you're wondering who this gentleman is over here, that is retired Sheriff David F. Harvey. Allegedly, she had a life-size cutout of him in her chambers that could sometimes be seen like when the doors were open. So that is when we come into her inappropriate conduct that was documented from 2012 to 2013. Publicly opposed a candidate for elected office. So in the run-up to the contentious 2012 sheriff's election, the filing, there was a bailiff that was assigned to her that did not support the re-election of Harvey. And he was supposed to be retiring, and there was someone else that was coming up. There was a contender, Charlie Creel. But Fulford publicly states, anyone who votes for Charlie Creel will not work for me. Within days, the bailiff that was in her courtroom who was supporting Creel was fired, removed. He was fired from his position at the courthouse, and he was relieved from all other duties at the sheriff's office. So it wasn't just because they could have like just removed him. She could have been like, I don't like his attitude, and relocated him to another courtroom. No, they took away all his duties. And then, yeah, for several months, she had this cutout of this dude in her office. She also, her significant other, she used her influence to interject herself into the criminal prosecution of his son, Trey Young, with whom she lived. So she was involved, overly involved herself in her judge position in this domestic violence case that Trey Young was having. So that obviously was inappropriate. And then influence. So she had asked a defense attorney who had a pending motion before her to represent another client without charge. So work for free, like she's eating up, his child's Cheerios money, as I like to say. And he said that he feared if he didn't do it, the judge would ask, it would end up in an unfavorable ruling on the motion for his client that was before her, who faced up to 15 years. So it's coercion, right? I don't know how clear it can get. It's coercion. It's a little quid pro quo. If you do this, I'll rule favorably on this motion for you. She didn't say that explicitly, but it's implied. Like, if you don't do this, you got a motion before me, right? Your client is looking at 15 years, right? What you gonna do? So he did that. And so eventually the JQC would rule your solicitation of the attorney to perform these services was an inappropriate use of your position and a violation of the canons. So it wasn't looking good for ma'am. And then she's facing charges. She behaved inappropriately while serving on the bench in Wakulla. So this happened while she was in Wakulla. So then comes the forced retirement. So the JQC, or the Judicial Qualifications Commission. So they had findings on these. They had clear evidence, right, about the clear line between this cardboard cutout, her statement about anyone who doesn't support Harvey, I will fire. And he was fired. So they had clear and convincing evidence that she was not conducting herself in a manner befitting a judge. So, but they gave her grace, right? So she had been under investigation for the alleged improprieties. And then she went on medical leave for nearly 5 months. So you guys probably know people like this who get in trouble on a job, and then they're like, oh, my leg hurts. Oh, my back hurts. Or they're under some sort of PIP or other thing going on, right? And then they suddenly get sick. It sounds like she pulled one of those moves. I don't know. She could have legitimately been ill. She seems fine now. But based on that, that is how they forced the retirement, right? They said she is not medically able to continue her work, and so we're going to ask her to step down. And she agreed to step down. Oh, also, I forgot this, dozens of high-profile cases rendering decisions on prison privatization, mandatory pension contributions, in addition to the fishing issue and the other issue that I mentioned. So where did she go after that? Young Fulford Cremation and Funeral Services is owned by LF Skip Young Jr. So he's the father of Trey Young, who had the domestic violence issue that she stepped in on, and Jackie Lee Fulford. Skip and Jackie share two very common and strong characteristics: the love of helping people in need and hard work. Together, they are here to serve families as they have never before been served in Tallahassee. Do y'all think she gave Donna a deal and like Donna's going to be buried in Tallahassee or maybe cremated and shipped back like she and Harvey? Because they're of age. I mean, and Donna's going to die sooner or later and she's going to be incarcerated when it happens. So why not get a little deal? Because all the motions Jackie is filing, she's making some coins off of Donna. Trust and believe. And then where is she now? Representing Donna. So she went from being akin to a Georgia Cappleman, all hail Georgia, in Georgia we trust, to representing Donna Adelson. Maybe she's laughing all the way to the bank. Maybe not. So yeah, my thing was, where are you guys? What was so medically wrong with her that she could no longer continue her judgeship, but she's fine to practice law? That's why I feel like they threw her a bone, right? They forced her retirement instead of having her leave disgrace, because then maybe she couldn't practice law if, based on this committee, they found her to be unethical. There's a lot of, let me just go back, of like legal speak in it, improprieties, inappropriate conduct. Like they don't ever say straight out she was unethical. But Kathy was right. She is a disgraced judge. I don't know how you get more disgraced than, ma'am, we're going to have to ask you to leave. Thanks for playing. Don't come back here again. Right? So what do you guys think? Do you think she should have had to step down? I mean, the whole thing with you're stepping in with your, it's not a stepson because I think they're domestic partners. That's why I said significant other. But still, man, what are you doing over there? And then telling the other guy to work for someone for free. Imagine if someone had made somebody work for Sarah Boone for free. They would be big mad. We don't know what type of client this is that she made this person work for free on. And certainly they were either having money problems, attitude problems, or both, because everybody's entitled to a public defender if they can't afford an attorney. So it had to be more than not being able to afford, right? Or maybe she didn't trust the public defenders and the system to represent her friend, because even if they had a conflict, they have the conflict attorneys, like that first level, and then they have the private attorneys who work for the public defender's office, like we saw in Sarah Boone's case, right? Cashman, Hobson, Bankowitz, they weren't in the public defender's office. They were doing public defender work to eliminate conflict. And so what was that all about? Definitely was feeling herself, definitely making decisions of like, my britches are big and you gonna do what I say. So we wish her well, of course, in her Adelson defense. Everybody deserves, every defendant deserves a zealous representation of their case, of their innocence. And so she's doing that. Now, is she looking at that discovery? It's water. She's not looking at that discovery, but she's zealously representing her client. So get your money, girl. I'm not mad at you. Hell of a comeback, She's not a greeter at Walmart. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I worked at Walmart. I'm just saying, you don't make six figures there. So she's doing all right. I'll talk to you guys later. Toodles! Hit me up in the comments. I'm curious as to your thoughts.